Hey everyone, I'm Charles Navarro, VP of Marketing Technology at Tchibo Max. It's great to be back at ICOM. What a fantastic gala last night. So I'm excited to moderate the next session, Commercial Mix Modeling, taking data and analytics to the C-level. And I'm joined by Alexander Folser of Tchibo and Maren Seitz of Analytics Partners. Alexander, please take it away.
Perfect.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. So just a quick intro of how Alexander and I and us have been working together. So we've been working together for several years now with Tchibo in Germany in a great partnership, definitely. And we're quite excited we can share some of the experiences today. And the topic really is about, like was just said by Charles, is to take data and analytics to the C-level, or specifically in our case, a commercial mix model. So, but why did we think it was important to talk about this? So if we have a look at the next slide. So of course, getting C-level buy-in has always been something that's important. We find that's even more so the case lately, and that is simply because businesses have had to adapt so fast, maybe faster than ever, and that really changed and evolved the roles of, say, a CFO and a CMO or C-level in general quite a bit as well. So what that means, for example, say the key focus of a CFO might have been very specifically, very strongly, mostly on financial metrics in the past. But with the speed of change and with the complexity of business, the expectation is really to now also contribute to the overall vision, to the overall strategy. And that also means understanding various business areas more deeply, including, say, marketing. And then very specifically here at the bottom is it's often also to make sure that any data treasures are used and leveraged and to drive a technology agenda going forward. So if we have a look at the next challenges, exactly, thank you. So there are some challenges in communication, almost inbred into all of this or ingrained into this. And often we see that different executives, say the CMO and the CFO, they might have different KPIs. They might talk about different timeframes. One might be focused on short-term revenue growth. The other one might be talking about growing a brand in the longer term. So that's already where there can be a bit of a disconnect. The second thing is language in general. So that is not just terminology and expert language, but it's also the thinking frameworks people refer to that might be very common in their space, but maybe not in another space. So it almost needs a translator between the two. The third thing is that the systems and the tools and the technology in use in the business, they're often not integrated. So they're not really reflecting the business holistically, but they're also not really coming together in a way that people understand what role each of the different projects that might be sitting in different areas play. And finally, because that's our topic today, I think analytics and tech, there's a very strong expertise in this, and still often that tends to sit in a silo and is done by experts that the rest of the business doesn't understand. So there are definitely things to keep in mind these days when it comes to communicating to the C-level, is we need to have that in the back of our heads. But I'll let Alex build on that a little bit specifically for Tchibo.
Yes, thank you very much. Let's move to the next slide. Yes, the topic of the next few minutes is culture eats strategy for breakfast. You know this from Peter Drucker, but it also eats measurement for lunch, unfortunately. So let me talk a bit about culture. Let's move to the next one. So you basically have the foundations of a marketing mix model, which works generally always the same. You have to establish the foundation, build the foundation in the organization. You have to establish the model. You have to learn from external sources, from external partners. Then you have to bring all this into the decision-making phase, and then you have to make it actionable. But culture here adds something to which we call the secret. Imagine you do this in a German engineering culture. Imagine you do all this in a culture where people say, well, what I haven't developed myself, I don't believe really. Well, if people say, what I don't understand 100%, I just don't buy it. Imagine people have a sort of German angst to do mistakes. There is a lot of things around this very typical flow of a marketing mix model or a commercial mix model, which can really harm at the end the output and the impact of the model. This is what we call then the secret sauce, which we have to add. Let's go to the next one. So the first thing, if we enter the cultural universe, is there is no one size fits all type of commercial mix model. Now you have to press a couple of times the button. Don't say next, 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 but this shows a bit how the Tchibo model of our company works. So we have 3 retail channels. They all have their own logic. We have supermarkets, we have retail stores, our own shop, and we have a big web shop. Next. And then we are selling coffee. We are selling mobile phone equipment. We are selling non-food products. We are selling different coffee brands. We have system brand. We have capsules. We have everything. And that's all sold in all these different channels. And then on top of that, we have the discussion in our company, or the point of view is that we have very different assortments. One consider ourselves as a retailer, the other consider ourselves as a brand. We have competing channels, of course, competing metrics. So this is exactly the background which we have to consider when we are adapting to the individual environment of the company. Next one. And that finally leads us to building not only one commercial mix model, but one which is adapted to company, which is here 17 models, which are then aggregated to one. So one size does not fit all. Let's go to the next one. The other point of one size does not fit all, we have different businesses which have inherent different rules of the business. You might also have in your company different businesses, sub-businesses, they all have different rules. One might be a supermarket business, highly promotion driven. The other one is a strong online business like non-food, for example, highly performance marketing driven. And then there is the individual view on how you want to build your business. Is it something where you want to strengthen the brand, where you want strengthen sales, first of all, or where your first and foremost interest is to sustain a certain base business, noise and base business level. What are we talking about? And we have to respect the rules of the business and the sub-businesses and the different approaches with it. Next one. Of course, we have to agree on common KPIs. I think it's an easy one. Not everyone is talking about the same efficiency and effectiveness metrics. We have to agree on that. We have to have sufficient granularity. One are talking about response in euros. The other one are talking about ROI in euros. The other one are talking about uplift in volume. The other ones are talking about uplift in sales in euros. So many different languages. So we have to come to what we call a net return on investment as a general metric. There we have to work always on a net level to avoid the next level of complication in a model where the one are talking about gross ROI, the other one's about net ROI. The one is with BC, the other one is without base contribution. And so all this needs to be gotten under control. And then finally, next one, please. We have to agree on common KPIs. And common KPIs means making things comparable. You have different businesses and sub-businesses. Now you can click next. Different businesses and sub-businesses. You have to understand your channels and you have the metrics per channel, per business unit, and understand which media, in which channel, in which business unit, for which product, at the end drives your biggest or your highest return. So you have to agree on common KPIs and on a common view on commercial mix modeling company. Let's go to the next one.
To the next slide. And you want me to take on this one, Alex?
Yes.
I'll keep this short. I think many people might have seen this before. I just mentioned at the start that often a CFO and CMO might think at different timeframes. So a CFO might be focused on the short term, a CMO more on the brand equity. So on the right, you see this famous chart from the long and the short of it that shows how important it is to build a brand, because over time that will be the only way to grow. But often the only thing that is seen in the short term is the left side of this curve. So it can be quite easy to have a short-termistic focus. So we'd always recommend just to bring in the success factor here, make sure in any measurement you do to have both the short-term and the long-term lens. So you have the arguments, but also the understanding of what the different impacts on the business are and can drive an agenda that doesn't just look at the next 6 or 12 months, but goes a bit further ahead. Let's go one further. I'm just conscious a bit of time as well, is what's always key is really to make sure to integrate other sources of information as well. So other projects, other information the business has, and that's just not just because you want to have a complete picture, but also because these projects have some legacy. They've built trust in the business, they've built credibility. So by integrating them into, like what we did here, into our solution or into the system, we make sure that people recognize something they trust and they also understand how it's connected. Okay, next, please. And finally, as with what we saw with Alex too, is allow for evolution. So start with something a bit simpler, give people time to digest, and then build on top. So for example, you might start with a commercial mix model that looks at performance of marketing channels, but you can then add in custom analytics, you can add in touchpoint analytics, you can add in operational analytics, but just do it over time, carefully, so the business can keep up.
All right. I know don't have enough time for questions, but we have the meet the speaker session later. So thank you, Maren and Alexander.
Pleasure.